Good evening and welcome again to Public Perspective. I'm your host, Kevin McDermott. And tonight we'll be returning to the subject of politics, one of our favorite topics here on this show. And our guest tonight is Rush Darwish, who is a candidate in the Democratic primary, 3rd Congressional District here in Illinois. That would be the U.S. Congressional District, House of Representatives. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, Kevin. Great show. Means a lot to
We
me.
haven't even started, but thank you.
You know what? I watched the show prior to coming on, and it's a great show, and I'm glad to be on. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the compliment. That makes you and about 3 or 4 other people who've watched it. I have
you have a following, you just don't know.
Yes, they don't make me all that aware. Anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to say I admire the guts of anyone who's willing to run for Congress, especially in today's hyper-partisan political environment. It must take real courage and internal fortitude to step into the fray. So let me start there and say, what on earth possessed you to want to run for Congress?
Yeah, I think you grow up and you are watching TV as a youngster. You're watching politician to politician promise so many things. From we're going to lower your taxes, you're going to have better health care, but then you end up finding out these politicians that are promising these things, they work for special interest groups, they're taking money from these lobbyists. As you get older, you start to realize that Washington, D.C. is nothing but this horrible game. And this game that we call politics, it's the everyday people like me and people like you, we're getting played. And I've seen enough. And I thought, you know, when President Obama was elected, I thought, you know what, this is where we're going to see change. President Obama was the voice of hope. He was the eyes of hope, and I love that. He inspired me.
The audacity of hope.
The audacity of hope, exactly. Yes. And I'm not putting it on Obama saying that he robbed us or ripped us off. No, I still admire President Obama. But for me, that was where I saw was a wake-up call that even with this beautiful energy of President Barack Obama, that's when things even started to get uglier in Washington, D.C. And some of the changes that we thought we were going to see when it came to health care, helping everyday people, we realized that once again, the game just continued. And to make matters worse, here comes Donald Trump, who completely changes the landscape. We thought already that Washington, D.C. was completely dysfunctional. But Donald Trump comes in and immediately says he wants to build a wall. And for me, my parents, they come from Palestine. I'm a child of immigrant parents. And my office, I'm a small business owner in a Latino neighborhood called Pilsen. And to see families get separated or walls being built, this to me is
children put in cages.
Put in cages. There comes a point where you say enough is enough. And we realize that, and I realize that for change to really happen, we need everyday people to run. And it could be for U.S. congressmen, it can be for a mayor of your town, but everyday people need to solve everyday problems. And that's why I'm running for United States Congress. And I will tell you this, when I made that decision and I started telling family, friends, and some political operatives, not everybody raised my hand and said, Rush, you go for it. You're going to get a lot of pushback and people questioning your intentions. But I believe in my heart and in my mind, as bad as I think Washington, D.C. is, I believe that it is my duty as an American that when you see something wrong, you should act. And when I say act, it doesn't mean you have to run for office. But for me, I felt compelled as an American to take that step. And that step to me is to run and represent the people of Illinois District 3. And by the way, I wouldn't make that move if I was happy with my Congressman Dan Lipinski.
Right, because I want to point out, you're running the Democratic primary. And so
that's right.
Congressman Lipinski is a Democrat and has been in office for a number of years now, maybe a number of terms. And so you're running in the primary, and the thinking is, well, if you're a Democrat, there's already a Democrat in that seat. So why are you running against Lipinski? What is it about his performance that you think needs to be changed?
I think the number one reason why anybody should be in office, whether, again, working in the library board, all the way up to the President of the United States, your number one duty should be to identify who needs the help. And I believe in my heart and soul, and the facts as well, it's not just what I see, that Dan Lipinski does not connect with everyday people. In his district, he has a very large Latino community. We went door to door. We talked to so many Latino activists, they've never even met him. And even in the time when we talk about these children who are put in cages, family separation, I visited at an elementary school. It's called Peck Elementary School. It's near Midway Airport. And I asked them, I asked the teachers and I asked some of the administration. I said, during this whole time, about 6-7 weeks ago, when there were protests everywhere, there was going to be ICE raids, and people were fearing their life. Our Latino brothers and sisters were terrified that some of them were going to be deported. You would think that your representative would at least go to the school and talk to the parents and talk to the students
and
say,
reassure
hey,
them
that you're going to be safe, that everything's going to be okay, and that although we all agree that we need immigration reform, but at the very least, you would think that you'd have your representative who would go into these schools and talk to the parents and assure them safety, that he would never, ever have a student be separated from their parents. And when I asked the administration, and they said, nope, he never came. He didn't go to any schools.
Did anyone invite him that you know of?
He doesn't have to be invited.
Well, I grant you, but...
Did they invite him? That part I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know, but you shouldn't have to be invited. That is where you take that step. You are the leader. You are the representative of those people. It should be your duty to make sure that you go into those schools, go right to the families, and assure them safety. He did not. And the list goes on and on of too many incidents that we've talked to, that we polled. And the reality is this: Congressman Lipinski spends most of his time working with unions, and we are pro-union. There's no doubt about it, but you have to understand that you have to do more. You have to make sure that you are representing all people, not people that you are using as your political power in order to get reelected. And I think that's the way many people see Dan Lipinski. He is the status quo, and I'm running for Congress because I believe the status quo has to go.
So, I like that song. Got a little bit of the rhythmic rhyme in there. You mentioned immigration, and we all know this is a horribly complex problem.
It is.
But what are some of your ideas about how it should be approached? Not just what's wrong today, but what needs to happen in the future to make it better?
Yeah, and like you said, it's deep, it's complicated, but to simplify it, we need to first identify the families that are coming in, whether you're coming from Latin America or different parts of the world. We have to identify the families that are coming to this country, like my parents, who see the United States as a land of opportunity. And those are the people, which I would say are 99%, by the way. We need to make sure that we do everything we could to have a fair system and put them on a path to citizenship. But before even path to citizenship, they should have an opportunity to work and provide for their families.
Now, but you mentioned something like, you said a fair system. And these are all subjective concepts. There are those who would argue that the current system is fair. I mean, everybody has a different concept of what that means, right? So what is fair in your eyes? Yeah,
fair to me is if somebody's coming to this country with their families, I believe that we need to reopen the door with all the countries. Let's start with Latin America. Right now, this is where we're seeing a lot of families.
The biggest
come
conflict,
through.
right?
Yeah, we have to build that coalition and reintroduce an immigration system where the countries and the United States are all on the same page as to what we all need to do to make sure that when families come to our border, that they have the proper paperwork that is agreed upon by the country they come from. And when they come here to the United States, they are received, and we want to make sure that they do have proper documentation. And when they do, that we have a system that immediately puts them in position where they can come into the United States, and the very least, as a starting point, should be able to work. And while they are working, there should be an opportunity for them to have a path to citizenship. This, to me at least, is a simple introduction as to how we need to introduce immigration reform.
Now, would there be, in your scheme, would there be quotas? Because, one of the arguments is, oh, gee, these Democrats, they all want open borders, just let everybody in. So, no country can withstand uncontrolled immigration. So what level of controls would you advocate?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Right now, I wouldn't say what the control is, because I would have to give a number, and at this stage,
not even a concept. I mean, not
I would say there definitely just needs to be a process. It's really more about the process first before we talk about the quota. And I think right now there's a lot of confusion. A lot of people who either come to this country or everyday Americans who we all ask, what is the real system? And right now when you have Republicans that they're giving out the way they think immigration needs to be, the Democrats have their opinion. As you said, some people say, oh, just open borders, everybody comes.
And that, by the way, I don't think any serious politician advocates that, but that's the slam.
This is the slam. Right. I don't believe in that. I believe that we need to have immigration reform where it is clear, it is concise. This is a starting point where we understand how you come into this country, how we make sure that you become documented. And here's the other catch. This is very important. Because we have a system right now that is uncertain, and we have too many people that are coming in that, well, they're not documented, they're getting jobs, and they're not paying their fair share of taxes. Well, we have to have a system, an immigration system that says, yes, you can work, and you should have equal pay, but with that said, you should pay your fair share of taxes as well. So this is another part of the equation to make sure that we bring people in. They have equal access to work, but they must pay their fair share as well of taxes.
Now, along that line, although if people are working in the subterranean economy, they may or may not pay income taxes. They may or may not pay into Social Security just because it might be a cash economy and no one knows what they're getting paid. But everybody pays sales tax. So there is a level of taxation that everybody in this country who's here is paying. So the idea that immigrants pay no tax is in fact...
Oh, they do.
They do. They pay all the... And in fact...
And stats show, by the way, that, by and large, the immigrants who come to this country pay a lot of taxes, more taxes, because a lot of them, the money they make, it's on the low income bracket, and the low to maybe close to middle class, they're the ones that are paying more taxes than, of course, the rich.
Well, we all know the rich don't pay a fair share. I mean, well, certainly that's my opinion.
Yes.
So there's also a problem of, or an issue that is raised, of the somewhere between 10 and 12 million undocumented immigrants who are already here and have been living here for, in some cases, many years, maybe decades. And this seems to be a particular hot button for this discussion as well. So how should we work with those people who are here? And as you know, the argument is, well, they snuck in, they're here illegally, and what is it you don't understand about illegal? So how would you approach that both operationally and in terms of political message? Because that's, as we know, the perception is just as important as the reality. So from both perspectives.
And this is tough, and I have to speak from the heart here. And when you're running for Congress or any level, it's a combination of policy, but also what you believe. And my belief is this: yes, there is a chance.
Aren't your policies based on what you believe?
Well, it's what you believe, but sometimes you have to look at stats and you have to look at data, and there's more than. You have to also think about what's best for all. It's what you believe, but also what's best for all, and you have to do what's right for everyone. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. You have to do what's best. You have to do what's best for all. That's your number one priority. Not really necessarily always what you believe. It's what's best for all. Your job is to serve. Now, with that said, though, my belief is if you've come to this country and you have a family and you're providing for your family, you haven't committed any crimes, you should have an opportunity to work and provide for your family in this country. And I believe that you should have the opportunity to be put on a path to get your citizenship. I believe we need to protect those families. I don't believe we should separate them and deport somebody who's been in this country for 15, 20 years who has a family here in Chicago or wherever they live around the country. So
the counter argument to that is that, well, gee, why should they skip to the head of the line? They snuck in, they didn't go through the process, and so these other people who have waited, followed all the rules and waited sometimes 10, 15, maybe 20 years in order to be able to become a citizen, why should these illegal border jumpers get a pass on that? And why do you think that I'm not saying that you think that they should get a free pass, but how do you answer that question?
Yeah, and it's a tough situation, and I would answer it by saying this. We all agree, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or whatever political affiliation you're with, our immigration system is a mess. All right, it's in bad shape, and we have a situation where, yes, people are coming into this country illegally. And part of the problem is the system, and it's the Republicans and the Democrats that keep on fighting, but they don't solve problems. And in the meantime, because of the fact there's this gray cloud of not really understanding what the real immigration system is, and it's not being enforced properly, it's not all the person's fault who came to this country illegally. Now, I know this, again, I know somebody who's watching your show right now are thinking, this guy's nutty. But
they think that about me too, so don't really feel bad.
No, they don't. They just think maybe I'm a little bit nutty.
Yeah, right.
But because of this, we can't put it all on somebody who came to this country illegally. I get it. It's not right. And yes, we have to make sure we have a system that's fair, that's reasonable, and that not everybody could just come in this country without any level of documentation. I'm just saying that we need to create a system that's a little bit more smoother, a little bit more transparent. It makes sense, and it really does favor the families that are coming to this country and want to work. It's that simple. Now, to get there, I know it's complicated, but for me, it's that simple. My parents came to this country in 1967, and they didn't come with an Arab dream. They didn't come with a Muslim dream. They came to this country with the American dream. And I know that there's people all over the world. As much as Donald Trump wants to repaint the American dream, I still know that people come to this country because they want to work, they want to thrive, and I believe immigrants are the backbone of our country. They're the ones that make Google, they make Apple, all the engineers that are in Silicon Valley, they're the ones that make America work, and they're the ones that make America great. I know that. So with that said, we have to have an immigration system that continues to bring in the best and the brightest, whether they're coming from the South, coming from the North, East, or West.
Let's switch subject for a moment.
All right.
So, I thank you. I mean, I think that I like the idea of presenting a goal first, and then you can work on how to get to that goal. But if you don't envision a goal and understand what the goal is, you'll never get there.
That's true.
Right. So I think that's a good way to position it. But let's switch to the hyper-partisanship in Washington. So if you are elected and you go to Washington as a Democrat, right now the Democrats control the House, so that gives some advantage that you're more likely to be heard. But how in this hyper-partisan environment can a newly elected freshman congressman work to try to tamp down the level of anger and animosity that seems to prevent anything real from moving forward?
Yeah, I'm a Democrat, and the interviews I've done with other media outlets, they'll ask me, am I a progressive? Am I a socialist? And I tell them I'm a Democrat. And I think there'll be issues where you may think I'm too progressive. You might even think I'm a socialist. I don't know, but I'm a Democrat. However, I'm also a person of reason. And I think you have a duty as somebody serving your country that you must listen to everyone. Now, although I would say pretty much every issue that, yes, I will lean Democrat, like I said, progressive or socialist or whatever they want to call it, they want to put you in that label.
Right.
But you have to listen. And whether we like it or not, as a Democrat, I have to know that it's my duty to listen to all. And if you're running for the 3rd District, yes, you know, I'm under the Democratic Party. But if I'm lucky enough and fortunate enough to win, I know that I have to serve everybody in the 3rd District. And you're going to have to listen to Republicans. You have to listen to people who don't have any affiliations. And you have to have that same mentality in Washington, D.C. So yes, if I'm talking to a group of Republicans and there's some sort of bill that is out, and I look at this legislation, I say, wow, this is great. I will have to take that back to my constituents, and we'd have to seriously consider it. And we can't always just go the party line every single time. And that's why we have such a problem in Washington, D.C. Let's work together. You know, let's have that conversation. It's going to be tough. You know, you work with me, I work with you. And that's when things start to get done.
Well, that was the model for many years in Washington. There was a really disturbing graphic that I'd seen. And now this graphic, I saw this a couple of years ago when it was talking about how the Washington's fracturing. And it was essentially a Venn diagram kind of thing, where it showed, here's a circle of all the Republicans and here's all the Democrats. And there are lines connecting them showing how many times they had voted for proposals from the other side. And you go back to the 50s and these things are almost merged. You know, there's tons of lines back and forth. And over the decades, it was like watching an amoeba split. And you'd see to the point where there were very few lines. Everyone was now in their own camp, and very little happened across the aisle. And that seems like a a trend that some fear may be irreversible. And so the idea that, well, can't we all just get along and let's just work across the aisle? There are lots of people who have thought that, and I think Barack Obama, for one, tried very hard, only to meet just incredible obstructionism from the other side.
That's true.
So how do you try to operate in that kind of environment?
Yeah, I think, again, it's important to be transparent. You always want to make sure to keep the door open. But if I'm going to reach my hand out and I want to talk to the Republican Party regarding various bills, and the tone I get is, door slam, we don't want to talk to you, then yes, you must operate in a different direction. But I'm saying, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, I will know that that door will always have to be open if you're willing to open it.
And you're at least willing to knock on that door to see if they'll open it.
I think the part that just burns me up with Washington, D.C. is this issue. There's a lot of things that burn me up with Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
But this partisanship is crushing Washington, D.C. The media has successfully created different narratives of what team you're on. Fox News, you're on this side. MSNBC, you're on this side. And I think it's created the narrative that, yes, if you aren't on the extreme left or the extreme right, that means you are unsexy. You're just vanilla. And
you're wishy-washy.
You're wishy-washy. And I think for me, I am a Democrat. And I think you'll probably see me on the left because that's the party I believe it's best for all people. However, you still have to listen. Your ears have to be open, and your eyes need to be able to see everything. And I think you have to at least give it an opportunity, because if I go in saying that I'm the everyday person, I'm the small business owner, I'm the basketball coach. I'm a small business owner, basketball coach. I'm watching TV and I'm like, man, what's going on there in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, you're a regular American. Yeah. Small business.
When I go every morning, 4 days a week now. I get up, I go to the train station, 6 a.m., and I'm getting signatures. And, I talk to people who are Republican, Democrat, and I think really at the end of the day, we really do have the same core values, most of us at least. We care about our families. We want to make sure that our kids are provided for, that their health is great. And you want to hear what the people I talk to, they just don't want to feel like they're getting ripped off. They want to feel that, some people don't mind paying the taxes if they actually know that it's going for all the right reasons.
Right.
Kind of like going to a nice restaurant. You ever go to a nice restaurant, like, that steak was $30, but it was a great steak. It was worth it.
Yeah.
Not when you go, you have that steak and it's like a little piece with lettuce around, and you're like, wait a second, I got ripped off. It's not what I paid for.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately the core still, through it all, and maybe I'm just being too optimistic, but
we need a little more optimism in the country.
Yeah,
right
I mean,
but go ahead. Yeah.
I believe that the core of this country, the people and the values that most people have, everyday Americans who get up, the people that I see every day, all they want is they want to get up in the morning, make sure their families are okay, and make sure that they're making an honest living wage, and that things are just fine. I mean, I know that sounds boring, but they just want to make sure that they're taken care of, and that we have a government on all levels that are just working for them, doing your job. And you know what? I think they're okay if they see mistakes. But as long as we all know that in any level of government that our intention is for the people, I think a lot more people would be more engaged in government. But that's why a lot of people are disengaged, because they have given up on the process. And I think it's really sad.
Well, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because optimism or pessimism, that's a decision people make. Right, and again, not to sound like Pollyanna. Oh, let's just think everything will be great, and it will be. No, we all know that's not true. But if you make a pessimistic decision that gee, nothing's going to get any better, you're right. Then it won't. And if you make the decision that things can be better, and then you're willing to step up and try to make that happen, then things can become better. But only if you believe that they can, and that through your own efforts, you can make that happen. So, with that being said, we've only got about 5 minutes left, but I want to.
We went for 30 minutes, you and me?
No, we got a few minutes left.
Wow, that was awesome.
But in those few minutes, I'm going to open a new subject that we should do a whole show on. That's
let's do it.
healthcare. So, we just saw new statistics reveal that for the first time, the first time since Obamacare was passed, we've seen a drop-off in people who are insured. How do we approach this nearly intractable problem of not just the delivery of health care, but insurance. These are related but separate subjects. Where do we start?
Yeah, this is the way I see it. Here's America, the United States, richest country in the world. We have a big pot of money. It's called our tax dollars. I think it's foolish for anybody to think that we cannot have a system, a Medicare for all system. Because you and me, you know, no matter where you come from or where I come from, you know, I'm not better than you. Your blood is not better than mine. If I get a broken arm, you know,
it's going to be
it's a
just
broken
as painful
arm.
as mine, right?
Exactly.
Right.
So we both deserve the same level of health care, no matter where you live or where you come from.
Or what your income level is.
Or your income level. We have the resources to make it up. And that's where I stand with Bernie Sanders. However, so I believe in Medicare for all. But I also think it's semi-ludicrous to tell somebody that they can't have private insurance. If you are, you know, my sister, you know, she lives in North Carolina, works for a big company, been there for 23 years. She's happy with her insurance. You know, and if she's happy with her insurance, and I know people are going to say, well, the CEOs are robbing people, but you should also have the option of having private insurance if you're happy with the insurance your employer provides. So this is the way, you have to have it both ways. And I'll leave it at this. You know, you need to have a Medicare for all option for small business owners like myself and everyday people who don't work for companies. However, you have to have it available, of course, a private insurance company for people who say, hey, we like our insurance.
Well, what you've just described is what I understand to be the public option.
The public option, exactly.
As opposed to Medicare for all, which I know the Bernie Sanders model is, we're going to rip that all out and we're going to do this whole thing. Whereas the public option says, look, we'll extend Medicare to anybody who wants it.
That's exactly right.
Right, and then if you, as you say, there are many people who are happy with the insurance they have, and if they like it, you can keep it. But if you want this public option, it's there for you.
That's what I believe in. Now, I also believe that if the public option is really that good, which is possible, the insurance coverage is great, your taxes don't increase like the way, you know, because the way the tax loopholes have been reshaped, or tax Wall Street, tax the 1%, as Bernie Sanders, and if it's really that good and everybody's happy with the public option, I promise you, the companies that provide the private insurance, they're going to look at that and say,
gee, competition, we better meet that.
Absolutely. So things will take care of itself. And that's going to take 10, 15 years, but things will evolve and everybody will go the public option. It'll fall that way if it's really that good.
And it may take time to get it that good.
It could take 10 years, it could take 15 years, but this to me needs to be the starting point. And this is where I disagree with what we call the progressives who say, let just the government run it all. The reason why I have an issue with that is because we just spent 27 minutes on your show talking about the deep problems we have in our government. So I say, let's take it one step at a time. Let's have a public option, but let's make sure that there's the option for people to keep their insurance or have other private insurance options available.
What a great way to finish up the show. And believe it or not, we're out of time already.
Oh, man.
So, Rush, we'll just have to get you
No
back.
part two.
No, well, I didn't say that. We can have a part two.
All right, awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us once again on Public Perspective. I'm Kevin McDermott, your host, and we've been visiting tonight with Rush Darwish, candidate in the Democratic primary on March 20th for the March 17th.
March 17th.
For the Democratic 3rd Congressional District, Democratic Congressional seat. Boy, I'll see if I can spit that out in a comprehensible sentence. But anyway, thank you for joining us. You can see us every Saturday night at 8 on Comcast Channel 19, and you can see us on the web at publicperspective.tv. So until next time, thank you and good night.